everyone. You're back with Stephen and me, Crispina Robert. Okay, Steve.
Yep.
I know you told me once that you keep close track of all the administrative details of your family in a file.
Well, pretty much. They're all in a folder somewhere in the cloud.
On a scale of 1 to 10, which would you say is, how complicated would you say is medical insurance and your understanding of it?
I would say up there about 7. It's fairly complicated. But I like to think I know some of it because I've had to help my parents make claims and stuff like that. But there always is still a few questions that I end up having to ask the insurance agent just to be sure.
Okay. In yet more evidence of how different we are, I fall into the category of people who do not know anything about medical
insurance. Why am I not
surprised? Okay, only because it boggles my mind. There's, MediShield Life, and then there's all these IPs, and then there's riders, things you can use for MediSave, things you can't use for MediSave, things you can use for... So...
It's a good thing you're married, otherwise you'd really be alone.
Exactly. No, so my spouse just says, okay, this is what we're getting, you sign here, and then transfer this money, and all's good.
But understanding how insurance work, how our healthcare system, sort of decides on pricing, and is this eventually going to cost us more in our own pockets? That's what we were asking today in this podcast.
Yeah.
And do we have this also buffet syndrome where we sort of feel like, since it's all paid for, let me just do as much as I can, take advantage of the system,
That's totally you, right?
I have to admit, I'm a bit like that. Yeah. When given the option to do an extra test, I'll be like, sure, why not? I'm not paying for it anyway. Now let's talk healthcare, because our health minister recently talked about how rising claims enabled by generous insurance policies might lead to an unhealthy sort of buffet syndrome, because we all feel that since I'm not paying for it, let me just do as much as I can, take whatever tests, But when we break it down, there are 3 areas of concern: rising claims, generous policies, and that buffet syndrome. So let's start with generous policies. Low co-payment, no limits. What's happening here? Why is this happening?
Well, I think the buffet syndrome, firstly, I think insurers these days have wisened up quite a fair bit, right? A lot of the tests that you put through for approvals, they actually do scrutinize.
Okay.
Right? And there is a massive adjudication team for a lot of the TPAs, the insurers, who will then evaluate whether these are appropriate.
What's TPA?
Third-party administrators. These are administrators for corporate plans.
So in other words, a doctor offers some kind of surgery or treatment. The insurer is not going to say, okay, sure, I believe you. They're going to say why.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll
Give
ask
me
a
the
few more
evidence.
questions.
Exactly.
But honestly, it's still not hard to to justify why you might require that extra test, right?
It's not hard, but you need to explain. And sometimes they will ask for evidence. So why do you think for this diagnosis, why do you need this test? Right? And why do you need this procedure?
Okay.
Right. So they actually do check a
Okay.
lot of this,
Okay, so how okay, Chris, maybe you can explain to us about this, this perception that it's easier to get claims and therefore everybody is claiming, etc.
I think, if I remember more than 10 years ago, there was this one insurance company that came in, and they actually changed the whole integrated plans scene altogether, because they introduced this thing as charge. Meaning to say that, if you go and see a doctor and the doctor bill you, everything is payable by insurance. And the upper limit was so high. And then they introduced rider, which allows you to basically not pay a single cent. Okay. So then, because, the insurance companies, they are very competitive, and everybody started offering something better to try and outdo each other. So then we have this problem that, since I've got a problem that, I've got a very good insurance policy, then I should claim it, right? So now when I go and see a doctor, the doctor will look at me, and there's a possibility the doctor will say, okay, I can go for option A.
Yep.
Option A is you do the surgery in my clinic. It's going to cost $1,000, but you can't claim.
Okay.
Option B is that, I can book you to a day theater. Yeah, I do the surgery, and then, you pay this amount. It's bigger, 5 times bigger. But then the insurance company would pay for it.
Right.
So it's possible that the patient will say that, okay, I can opt for the more expensive one. Anyway, the insurance company is going to pay for it.
No, but that's normal behavior, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
most people would do.
And honestly, if you ask me to do it in the clinic versus in a hospital, I feel a lot safer in a hospital. So I would take that
Yeah.
option, knowing even though I know it costs more because you have to have the nurses, the
Yeah.
theater,
The whole support
etc.,
system,
etc.
Yeah. And the doctor may say that, well, the difference also is that if you go to the day theater, we cut it. No, we will send it for biopsy, right? Because we need to send it for biopsy to be able to claim, right? And why not a free biopsy,
Yeah,
Why
right?
not?
so-
Maybe-
Personally gone through quite a few incidences like
Yeah.
that. Another example would be that several years ago, my son tore his MCL and he went to the hospital. And then at the A&E, the doctor actually said, well, it looks like you have tore your MCL, but the only way we can find out is to do a MRI. And it was about midnight.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we said, okay, do we need to do the MRI tonight? And the A&E doctor actually said, no need, right? Because the orthopedic surgeon is not going to come until tomorrow anyway. Why don't you let your son rest, stay one night, tomorrow we do the MRI. Then we went to the admission, and then this was a private hospital, and then the admission person said, would you want me to activate the radiologist to come down?
Right.
And then we said, no, but the A&E doctor said, no need. Right, but then the admission nurses, the nurse was saying that you got insurance to pay for the $800. That was actually what he said.
So I understand from the hospital and the medical point of view, because they are making $800 more. But the insurance party has to pay out $800.
Yeah, of course.
And okay, so we benefit. The doctors benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hospitals benefit. So the only one paying for all of this is the insurance company.
But ultimately, it hit us.
Yes.
Does it come back to us? That
Okay,
is the
how?
question,
How
right?
does
It
it?
does.
Okay,
Yeah.
how does
So, not all the insurance plan, but there are definitely some insurance plans that actually have a, if you do claim, your next year's premium will go up, and it's by multiple.
This
Right.
is like your no claim bonus kind of
Exactly,
thing.
exactly like
it's
car
like your car
insurance.
insurance.
Yeah.
Some
So
IP
if you
plans are
use,
like
you
that.
pay more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But I mean, even if you don't buy that kind of IP plan,
Yeah.
there are, right? There are a few insurance companies that has discount NCDs. But if you don't buy this kind, it's going to come back to you one day because insurance company will have bad experiences and they have to cover their costs, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we have all been experiencing the IP plans, the riders, the premiums have gone up so much, right? But as a consumer, it's like, but I've been paying for the last 10 years. If I don't claim, somebody else is going to claim. I might as well do it.
So you're saying at the end of the day, if insurers are paying more in the long term, premiums will eventually go up, right? There's no way they can sustain this.
Yeah.
How does it increase the healthcare cost, on the whole, right? Because from the government's perspective, I can see that. They're worried that as more and more people claim for these things, unnecessary things in some cases, the cost will go up. Doctors will start charging more, for example. Resources are being used as well.
Does it jack up the cost of healthcare?
What Minister Ong has mentioned I think is absolutely correct, which is the vicious cycle. Right. At some point, we need to break that. But in order to do that, I think stakeholders within the ecosystem will need to come together to really collaborate and think through, right, on the same table, how best to resolve this. Because the thing is, not one single party can come up with a solution, right? The hospitals themselves can't do it. The insurers themselves can't do it, right? The doctors themselves, no matter how big a group they are, can't do it on their own, right? So the best way to resolve this is to sit together and say, let's resolve this. So I think one of the examples that we have been working with the insurers on is really two things, two very simple things, right? What are patients most concerned about? When you have panel plans, right? First question they'll ask is, who are the doctors in the panel?
Yeah.
Are they good,
Yeah.
right? Secondly, how much is this, right? Is this going to be expensive in terms of the premium I pay? So one of the ways to control this and work with the insurers is we design a plan and say, hey, why don't we start volunteering or reporting clinical outcomes, right? So that you can safely tell policyholders that these doctors are of certain standard or caliber.
Right.
Then on top of that, we say that, hey, look, under the ministry, there's a fee benchmark, right? It is very clear there's upper bound, lower bound, right, mid bound, and say, well, we're happy to stick to a certain range of fees that you are comfortable with so that we don't unnecessarily have to increase your cost, which the policyholders have to pay in the end.
Okay.
Right? So we give free assurance and clinical outcomes.
Let's use an example because we have this example of a heart bypass surgery. So in a subsidized C-class ward, the bill can be about 6,400.
Let's say.
Yep.
Right? If it's an A-class ward, you're talking about 40,000. In private, that will jump to $83,000. Why is there such a huge disparity? And you understand everybody needs to make some money along the way, but when is too much? Well, just too much.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, would you even if I have very good insurance, all the riders, and my co-payment is very small, why would I pick that, really upper band,
I mean, I'll just
cost?
say that, between the subsidized wards, the B2 and C in the public hospitals, I mean, if you go there, you got to accept the fact that you can't choose your own doctors, right?
Yes.
You got to take
Yep.
anyone that's assigned to you. I
Correct.
think that's key.
Yeah.
Many patients, they prefer to choose their own doctors, right? So if you want to do that, then you cannot go to B2 and C. So straight away, there's a difference in cost. You must be prepared to pay more, right? Quality of care, I would say, or quality of the room. I mean, not many people, they can sleep very well in the B2 and C.
Okay.
I mean, nowadays, you don't care about TVs and all that, but you want a better quality of care, better quality of sleep. Then
You
gotta
don't want
stay
to
in
wait
the room.
also, right? Because there's
Yeah.
a element of waiting in public.
Ironically, today, it's harder to get a single bed ward in a public hospital.
See, this is the interesting thing. So while people, more than 70% of us have integrated plans, which means we can actually walk into a private
Yeah.
hospital to get treatment. But we don't. We choose the cheaper option of, let's say, a B or an A ward in a public hospital.
Yeah, because there's also the post-hospitalization to worry about, right? Because
Ah.
whilst I'm worried about the one-time payment, and if mine is a chronic illness and requires follow-up care for the next 12 months or 24 months, insurance company cover up to 12 months, and after that it's on you. So if you choose to go to a private hospital, well, the very expensive cost can be taken care by the insurance, but what happens after 12 months? What happens after 18 months, right? So I think people will want to, I mean, like what you mentioned, they might go to a public hospital because of that. Yeah, but I was just saying just now that today, if you go to a government hospital,
Yeah.
it's actually quite interesting because you realize that if you want to go to a one-bedder, it's harder now because people has got insurance, so they will just go for the
Sure,
one-bedder.
Yeah.
And then to your point that it's faster, it's also true for acute conditions. For example, my son, if he wants faster treatment, he will go MCL, right?
Yeah.
So he will go to a private hospital because he doesn't want to go to A and E and Q.
So the examples we gave just now of the pricing from 6,400 to 40 to 83,000. Do insurance companies also work this out with the doctors to say, okay, this is the price we will agree on. Therefore, they know that if you go to this doctor, it'll be this price. You go to the public hospital, it'll be this price.
So, but to be clear, that 80,000 example that you quoted, there's two parts to the bill, right?
Yeah.
Usually. So there's always a facility fee, hospital bill, and then there's a professional fees, which is a specialist bill.
Yes, the doctor's fees
Yeah.
and stuff.
So
like
the
that.
specialist fee is controlled by insurers as well as the Ministry of Health fee benchmark.
Okay.
The hospital charges are not controlled. Right. So it really depends out of the 80,000, how much of that is doctor's fees and how much of that is hospital fees.
Then why do people pay so much for riders, Chris? I mean, if you're gonna save money and go into A class at I don't know, Tan Tock Seng or whatever, SGH,
Yeah.
why would I pay so much? Because it's not cheap, right? To
Yeah.
get such a
Yeah.
covered insurance.
Just in case thinking. Yeah, just in
Yeah.
case the bill is so
What?
high.
Just in case
I've got a
thinking?
rider, but well, honestly, ever since the riders premium they have gone up so much,
Yeah.
it's beginning not to make sense to actually have a rider. However, today people want to buy the rider because of this thing called cancer drug list, right? Because if you are just having MediShield Life, if you have a normal IP plan, these hospital plans cannot cover treatments as outside of the cancer drug list,
Okay.
right? But if you want the option of treatments that is outside of the cancer drug list, then you need to have a rider. So if you are afraid, even though the government has been telling us don't be afraid, because the cancer drug list, they would have covered like 90% of the drugs. And these drugs are actually, the
Yeah.
efficacy is very high.
Right.
But that 10%
It's just a nice to have.
is a Castle syndrome. It's
yeah.
like,
And, no,
it's good
and
to
you
have.
can afford it. You're like, why not? Why not just,
No,
pay for
I
it
guess
and-
if you have a rare cancer and there's
you
one
won't know till
special
later, right?
VIP drug, you would
Yeah.
you would
But
say
you won't know
yes.
till later on, and you don't want to wait. By
No,
the
but
time
if I don't have access to that drug, so it's the worry that
Yeah, I mean,
won't have
it's the
access.
worry that if the 90% of that drug,
doesn't fall into
yeah, and
What
you
they
want
call
that
sway,
10%,
as we say,
yeah,
right?
then you want that rider.
Lucky.
Then of course you pay for it. You pay for the rider. Yeah.
okay,
so you're
so
paying for option value.
Yeah, and that's what insurance is, really, just to give you that
It's an option,
assurance, I
yeah.
guess, right?
if you can afford it,
If you can afford it.
yeah.
So,
So we're finding that quite a according to a Straits Times report, right, between 2020 and 2023, 2.2% of people over the age of 60 are giving up their IPs because they are finding that they can just fall back on basic MediShield Life. They've been paying pretty high premiums over the years, and when these cannot be covered by MediSave anymore, they say, you know what, I'm giving it up. Yeah. So what's the repercussion of something like that?
Well, like I shared earlier, it's all about options. So if you just have only MediShield Life, you got to accept the fact that when you go to the hospital, I mean, the key thing to me is that you cannot choose your consultant. You just got to be happy that, you're there. Maybe a registrar is assigned to you. And every morning, maybe the senior consultant will come for an entourage of people. And I used to joke that you become the lecture theatre because the senior consultant shake your hands. How are you? And after that, he turns and he teach the people, right? So if you're okay with that, actually B2 and C is all right. But I think many Singaporeans, they always want their option. And if they can afford it, they may not buy a private hospital kind of hospital insurance.
Yeah.
They buy a plan that allows them to stay in a B1 ward.
Or an A, right?
Or an A, but I would say B1 is good enough because B1 allows you, B1 is really not subsidized. And you can
Yes.
choose the doctor that you want to use,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So if you don't want to spend too much, but you still want to have the option of choosing your doctor,
yeah.
and you buy a plan that allows you to go to a B1 ward.
From what Crispina is saying, how people are dropping off as they get older because it's too expensive. It's a bit ironic because you're being insured by the companies when you're younger and probably healthier. And now as we age, we're more likely to need to tap on the system. Yet they've given up these, these additional options. So do insurance companies then make money from us, paying these premiums during our healthy years, and then avoid having to kind of get away with the bigger bill later down the line because now it's become unaffordable for some people?
This is a bit different from life insurance, whereby you pay a flat premium,
Okay.
right? And then when you are younger, you are less likely to claim, and then when you are older, you are more likely to claim.
Right.
So the risk averages out. For hospitalization insurance, not like that, right? The premiums are priced according to your age band. So as you get more expensive, you are actually charged more. But when you're younger, you are charged lesser. So you don't really lose out in the sense that you
okay.
overpay too much when you're younger. Now that when you need it, you give it up. So no, yeah.
Okay.
But I think back to your point on repercussion, right? It's a zero-sum game at the end of the day, right? So if you don't buy insurance and go to private sector, then and everyone gives up their private plan and go to public, the government will have to spend money and start investing in a lot more facilities and resources.
They can't build so many public hospitals.
Well, I mean, if people are dropping their private plans and not go to private hospitals, they need to go somewhere. So the public system will get choked up at some point,
Yes.
right? Unless continued investments will start pouring in. So I think at the end of the day, whether people are paying it for private plans or people are paying through tax to invest, right, in public system, I think someone still at the end of the day have to pay for it. Yeah.
I honestly feel that our healthcare is quite affordable to a large extent. I mean, the cost of living in Singapore has gone up, tremendously. But when it comes to things like medical care, if you have insurance, it's okay.
If you have insurance.
Yeah, but I mean, all over the world, I think there's no way to get away with no insurance nowadays because any procedure, the moment you're in an operating theatre, it's in the tens and 20, 30,000 easily.
Yeah. No, but I'm just wondering if MediShield Life can be enhanced to a point where people don't need to feel the need to have this kiasu behavior, right? Like just pay more and more.
You're saying that it's actually quite affordable, and I agree with you. My parents went to subsidized ward all their life before they passed on. I mean, my wife, she goes to subsidized ward. The quality of the care is the same. The only
Yes.
difference is actually you can't choose your doctors.
But you
Yeah.
may also get the head of department coming to treat you,
Yes,
even
yes,
in
you
the
do.
subsidized ward.
Yeah,
so.
you
If
do.
you have a very interesting case, maybe.
No. I mean, they all take on subsidized cases. It's not like
Right.
this doctor is only reserved for private patients, you know.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
So my experience with sort of like subsidized treatment is actually very good. So you actually don't need to go to a B1 ward and above.
Right.
And if you are okay with that, as long as you're okay that you don't have to choose your doctors, actually our healthcare cost is, I would say, affordable because it's hugely subsidized.
Yeah, if you go into a subsidized
Yes.
system. But
Yes.
once you cross into private, then I think most people will say it's not affordable
Yeah, but
anymore.
most people, I would say, they don't need to go to a private hospital unless you want it fast, speed, right?
Right.
And if that's the case,
And some
then you pay
really
for it.
special doctor. who
Or
is
if you want a
like-
different experience.
I mean, the hospital
What
rooms are
different
nicer.
experience.
Yeah, the
Ming,
hospital rooms are
Ming
much
is
nicer.
the boss of many doctors.
you want to
so
know what
he
different
knows.
experience? I can tell you.
Please tell me, what's the difference?
I went for a sleep test, and I was put in this hospital, and on the menu it's lobster laksa and lobster congee.
Oh.
My God.
I didn't know about it. To be fair, I didn't know about it.
That's what you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Yeah. When you walk in, the lobby is different.
Yep.
It smells different. Everything is like a hotel, right? You know the difference.
Yeah, it feels like a hotel.
Yeah, so I guess, and that's part of the medical tourism as well, because if you think 80,000 is a lot, imagine the guy who is coming from overseas. I think they're paying double that price easily, right?
Yeah, okay. So guys, just to wrap up,
Yeah.
what do you think is like might be some of the difficult points here, right? Like some of the pain points in the current system that's raising some concerns with our, some of the political leaders and the comments that they're making.
You can control sort of like the fees of
Yep.
the specialist,
Yes.
right? He can't control the cost of the facilities. So that if that can be controlled, that would be good. But even though we can control the cost of the specialist, the fees, the part that is hard to control is what the doctor prescribed, right? So I can control that surgery A is fixed at 1,000,
Okay.
but I cannot control the doctor to prescribe surgery A, B, and C and find a reason to prescribe surgery B and C, although only A is required. That part is a bit tough. Of course, not all doctors are like that.
Right.
There are just that few that will do that. But how do you control that? I find that to be something difficult. But if you can do that, then I think that will help to control the cost. That will control the premium, the rising premium. If we don't do that, I think we're going to end quite badly because already the premiums are going to a level whereby it's just crazy.
So in the end, we will bear the cost. Lah.
Ultimately, just that when we claim, we don't realize it. Yeah, but it will hit us.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you really want to resolve this, one of the key thing is really evaluate and think about the cost of doing business. Cost of doing business in Singapore is not cheap, but there are many ways to try to bring that cost level down, right? The administrative costs based on a publication by the Singapore Medical Association, right, is very, very high. And the reason why is because healthcare is so complex,
Yep.
right? From a single specialist clinic, we have to deal with so many insurers. Different insurers have got different forms, different claims processes, different fee schedules, so on and so forth.
Right.
So it's a massive task to administer all this, and it's very costly.
Yeah.
Not just for the hospitals, but the doctors, the insurers themselves
Yeah.
find it very costly to administer this.
Right. No,
Yeah.
no. In defense of doctors, you were saying, right? It's not so easy to just prescribe a surgery because they will
Yeah.
have to prove
Yes.
why the surgery is important.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the requirements
Yes.
now, right? Because some doctors, commentators online and in the media have said that, hey, it's not us. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes it's the balance of power is shifted towards what the insurance guys are asking us to do
Yeah.
too.
In fact, a lot of the TPAs or the third-party administrators have given us a price list for drugs. So even
Right.
for the drugs, our nurses will have to go through the list, right?
Ah.
Pages and pages long to say, okay, for this particular drug, I can only charge, let's say, 50 cents,
Ah.
right? It's so
That's good for
controlled,
us.
right? Not just from a consult perspective,
Yeah.
from procedure fees,
Right.
as well as drug fees. Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't make a difference to us because we still pay the
Exactly.
same. It just
Yeah.
means that they can only charge the insurance company 50 cents for that drug instead of $2.
That's
you know?
right. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So it sounds quite complicated, right?
It is.
yeah,
It
and
is.
at the end of the day, the thing is, when it comes to the patient, we have to trust our doctors. If they say, I think you should take this test, I mean, do you then say, nah, it's all right? You know, I mean, because what if there really is something wrong with you, which a test could have helped you discover, right? So it's a very gray area, and I think we can't clearly say that just cut down on your medical expenses by just having less tests and less medical advice just because it's cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, it depends because I rather not do too many tests.
Yeah, you can just start by going for your health screening once a year. That's a simple one.
Okay, any last, piece of advice? Maybe, Chris, we can start with you. Chris, by the way, was on our Money Talks podcast in what I consider one of our best episodes. And you said that actually Singaporeans tend to be overinsured. And buying all sorts of things that they don't actually need, ordering all sorts of things that they don't necessarily want.
That's why all insurance agents have such nice cars.
Okay, not all, but yes. Not all,
okay,
yes.
so even if we could afford top dollar for the best premium insurance plan, integrated plan, etc., rider, etc., what would you say?
Everyone plays a part. The doctors play a part, the insurance companies play a part, consumers play a part. I think we need to decide what we want to consume because ultimately we need to know that it will hit us.
Okay.
We need to decide whether for this particular illness, we need to go to the private hospital or we are happy with the public hospital. When we go to the hospital, sometimes I know it may be difficult to decide whether I should take the advice given by the doctors. But personally, from my experience, there are certain things that are very clear that you can avoid overclaiming, right? And make that decision. I know it's hard.
But you are a smart man. You would know that.
No,
Not everybody would.
Some they are very blatant. You will know that actually
really?
you don't need to claim.
Doctors who are very blatant.
Have that courage to say no, I'm not going to claim. I'm just going to choose the one that is cheaper, but I have to pay by my own, knowing that ultimately you are going to pay for it through the rise of
Whichever
the premiums.
way. Okay. Ming.
Well, I think it is really quite timely. I think the system do require a re-evaluation, right, in terms of how we design some of the plans, how we incentivize the doctors, how we manage fees, and how we do cost containment, but not at the expense of clinical outcome and care. Right,
Okay.
patient care will always come first. All right, that's the whole genesis of providing healthcare, right? And I think parties will need to come together. And I think if the ministry can take the lead in this, I think we are happy as a fairly large platform to come on the table and discuss how best we can take this forward and make healthcare more accessible and more affordable moving forward to all Singaporeans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because we do know we are an aging population here in Singapore, so we're going to be having to use this more and more often, unfortunately, So yeah, we need to find that sweet spot.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for coming in. Of course, a big shout out to all of you who are watching us. If you have any comments, thoughts, do share it with us on YouTube in the comment section. Let us know if you have ideas for topics as well. We'd love to hear from you. A big shout out to the team as well. Junaini Johari, Tiffany Ang, Saya Win, Joanne Chan, and To Yen Yun. Video editing by Hanida Amin, and sound mixing is by Ken Delbridge. This is Deep Dive. See you next week.